Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. And tonight we're talking, well, three of us are talking to a Powerbomb. I'm not sure what the fourth guy is going to be talking about, but we're talking Daniel Warren Johnson's Do a Powerbomb. And I got my Daniel Warren Johnson crew with me. I got my man Daymars. What's up?
Hey, was I the one? Do I get to talk about Murder Hobo?
No. You're talking Do a Powerbomb.
Okay.
you're talking Do a Powerbomb. And so is this guy.
I know what book I'm here for. I don't know what the rest of you jamokes are doing.
And then somebody thinks we're just doing a 2.0 of a Murder Falcon show. I don't know what's going on.
I mean, in my defense, you had the chat named Murder Falcon still.
That's what it was named the first time, yes.
And I also, all the time I'm on these shows about Murder Falcon, I always accidentally at some point will call it Murder Hobo. So I'm glad that you're here, Dares.
No, I
we didn't need us to read Murder Hobo. So we had some guy that, he just shows up. I don't know. Was in here in the chat. We got GTP.
I was also the first one to hit the like button.
You were.
I'm just going to say it's still got one like. I don't know.
Probably all it's going to get is my channel. Scott, what's going on?
So the rest of you guys need to get off your butts.
Kindle, what is happening? With this Powerbomb to speak about. Yes, we're going to get into that. Hey, Phil, what is going on? So, we're going to get into Danny Warren Johnson's latest. I don't think has he started anything else?
No, because this came out after Jurassic League, and then he has the Transformers series coming out.
Getting ready to have the Transformers series, that's right.
But this was the last one.
All right, so and this is the last of his.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah, I haven't read the Jurassic League because I heard mixed things on it.
I think it's Daniel Warren Johnson adjacent.
Okay. So, is there a different writer, or is he writing it too?
I think it's supposed to be co-written, but I think it's more Daniel Warren Johnson using his name to help out a friend in a book grow a little bit. So
gotcha. Wow.
I got my Murder Falcon coaster ready for this.
We're not talking Murder Falcon.
Sorry, wrong book again.
Do a Powerbomb right there. All right. So, our second foray into the world of Daniel Warren Johnson. Daymars, what did you think of Do a Powerbomb? Now, you didn't read it till today.
Yeah. It wasn't as good as I hoped it was going to be, but it definitely wasn't bad by any means. I didn't think it was bad whatsoever. I liked it. I'd recommend it to people. I thought it was really good. I just think I set the bar really high with Murder Falcon.
I can get that. Totally. John, what about you? Now, I assume you did reread it because you were reading it as the issues were coming out. So you did reread it for this. What did you think?
I skimmed it back over here. Yeah. Obviously, it's unfair to compare it to Murder Falcon because Murder Falcon might be one of the great indie comics ever. Like, it just might be top 3 for me. And so that's an unfair bar. So in that way, you might be let down if you're like, am I going to get that same Murder Falcon, love out of this? However, when compared to the vast majority of comic books out here, this is absolutely head and shoulders above the rest. And I was very entertained by this. I'm not a wrestling fan. I have the number of complete wrestling events I've watched is a fat donut. Never seen a single one. I've seen pieces. I'm aware enough to know who certain people are and their taglines or whatever, but have never legitimately watched a wrestling event. And in that way, I was definitely not looking forward to this one and was pleasantly surprised by how accessible this book it was. And I was able to be drawn into that universe because of all the great character work being done here.
Greg, what about you? What did you think about this? Did you reread it, or did you?
I did reread it actually today. I reread it, so I was the same as John. I was reading it in the singles, and I reread it today, and I was so glad I did because there were so many notes that it hit that I was just like, yes, I am, unlike John, though, a wrestling fan, and I've frequented many of wrestling tournaments live. I've even dragged the missus to it, and so this was just fun all around. I do feel like it almost comes off as a little bit of like Murder Falcon is like Sixth Sense, and like this is held up of like everyone's going to compare it to Sixth Sense now, and this was Unbreakable. Like, it's still good, and you expect you knew like there were going to be emotional beats in this movie, but you were expecting it a little bit more because of
Yes.
Murder Falcon. And so I think that's where it is. Like, so it is kind of unfair to compare it to that, but I get where you like,
it's natural. We all will like,
because it's such a good, so I think it's good in its own mind, but it is going to be interesting reading more Daniel Warren Johnson stuff moving forward. How does he balance it? Because I think he's starting to get to that where people know him, that he's going to have emotional tones in a book, and is that something that he can still keep bringing, or is he going to try something different? And is it going to go the M. Night Shyamalan route where it doesn't work?
Well, let's hope it doesn't go that route.
Right.
But, so I think I have to agree, just in general terms, where you guys are at. We'll dig into it. It does not reach the heights that Murder Falcon reaches. But as John said, few things do that we get. It does have the emotional tug. I don't think it just doesn't quite work quite as well, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It's a fabulous read. It's a lot of fun. I was in my younger days very much a wrestling fan. I haven't really watched wrestling in a long time. You can definitely see as Adam and I were talking before you got on here, Greg, you can definitely see that his inspiration came from New Japan wrestling and not like the more US kind of stuff that we're used to. There's definitely, because he talks about this in his little foreword here about, it was not till 2018 that he even found wrestling. So like very, very recent.
So you have time, John. You have time.
Yeah, you can still find it.
There's
man.
still a chance.
There's still a chance. So yeah. But I do think it is interesting, and we can maybe talk about it later. But yeah, it is interesting to think about. He has set the bar pretty high for himself, that it will be hard to like reach those heights going forward. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about our introduction to do a Powerbomb. So it opens, and we get the classic, hero versus villain wrestling, heel and babyface wrestling match here. We're getting at the beginning for the Tokyo Grand World Heavyweight title. And we got and interestingly enough, we have a female wrestler versus a male wrestler, which we don't get a ton of here. And so we get this, Eunice Steel Rose is kind of the wrestler in the circuit, and, her villain. But we also see that, she's a mother and her family before it starts. What did you guys think of the introduction here? As we get into this, her wrestling, we see this champion and the villain. Greg.
I really loved it. Like I was captured right away from the get-go of this. Real quick, I assume we're doing spoilers because you can't talk about this book without it, right? So if you haven't,
you can. We're full spoilers for anybody.
Okay, so if you haven't read the book, I would highly recommend just not listening to this podcast.
We're always full spoilers on this show. So.
Okay, I just wanted to double. I'm not hopping into any yet, but it just, as a wrestling fan, I was a little hesitant coming into this story, not even from the same reasons that I think John. But I feel like we have seen an influx of wrestling comics in the last year with, Crimson Cage. And then there was another one with, and so I was just like, oh, great. Here we go. Another wrestling comic. And I'm a wrestling fan, but I was like, how do you get into it? And right from the get go, it drew me into the characters of Cobra Sun and, Steel Rose.
Steel Rose. Yeah.
I thought what I think this really thrives is the action and the action shots that you get. It's not a full like splash page, but it's like 3/4 a splash page where you have Cobra Sun doing a backflip off the top rope. And it just is like those moments right there. I think Daniel Warren Johnson does such a beautiful job throughout this whole book that it makes you feel like you are in the wrestling match. And obviously he has to move these wrestling matches a lot faster than they do in real life because but I think it encapsulates a good back and forth through that. And it was interesting to see right off the bat. So the first issue, it set it up for, okay, I'm here for it. And then right away, when you have the tragedy that happens at the very beginning of this issue, it sets it up in a way that I'm like, this is going to be something that it's going to be action packed, but it also is going to have heart.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really good opening issue.
So I think that sets me up good for asking you, John, as the non-wrestling fan who's never watched wrestling. What did you think of the way this opening sequence plays out here? And I mean, it's obviously enough about wrestling to know that it's all choreographed in the moment. Like they don't necessarily have it worked out beforehand, but they're calling it and doing their different
predetermined.
Yeah, it's they work through. What did you think about how this is laid out? How he displays what they're doing here?
I think they do a great job of looking at the physicality and the movement. There's definitely, like to what Greg is saying, the skill of Daniel Warren Johnson is in the movement and how he captures it. We have this critical moment, of course, that we see where an accident occurs, and it's captured clearly so that the moments preceding it that feel dangerous are shown to be safe. And then the moment that is deadly, you can see where it goes the other way, right? Where it becomes unsafe. And that's, again, skill of an artist who's able to capture visually movement in still images, able to capture movement and gravity, weight, all of those juxtaposing images that don't necessarily fit in a still, flat, two-dimensional drawing. And that's what really makes that sequence work. And the later fight sequences work as well, is his ability to capture that.
Yeah. What about you, Damon? What do you think of the setup here we have our tragic moment at the end, which we've had in wrestling. I mean, these things have gone wrong.
I know it's kind of like odd, but the fact that it was an intergender match kind of threw me off. And I guess that's probably from being a wrestling fan somewhat, but it just, I don't want to say it, took away from it, but it did for me personally just a little bit, because that really doesn't happen that much. Yes, I know it's a comic book. Yes, I know it's,
I love how that's the biggest. I bet that's the biggest suspension of disbelief for Adam. Is like,
it wasn't the Mortal Kombat style.
No, fighting in the underworld and getting a grant a return to life. None of that blows the reality for me. But that combo, that's
you've been around. It does happen. It's just not very.
It does happen. Well, it's just not rare.
I'm just curious. Are either of you guys Japanese wrestling? Because I'm not. I have never watched Japanese wrestling.
I don't know if that is something more common. I'm a Japanese wrestler. I don't watch the wrestling.
Yeah. I just didn't know if that was something that
probably less common over there than it is over here.
Okay.
Really?
Oh, I would have thought maybe more, but yeah, okay. So
there aren't too many female wrestlers in Japan.
See, that's something I didn't know. So I was just wondering, since that's what he watched.
Mexico, they have more intergender matches than.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's up, Nick?
Yeah.
Hey, Nick.
Sorry, we interrupted you though.
Yeah. So go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Damon. Finish
but,
that.
So that took just a little bit of, and these are all small critiques. This was a fantastic book. I recommend it to anybody. But yeah, the just the action sequences and how much they fit in, and the announcers and how much they one of them in particular seems like an actual real person announcer.
Yeah.
Even some of the taglines and stuff like that, and just some of the other little tidbits and stuff they put in, and the actual names of actual moves and stuff. That was really well done.
So yeah, I think it's a great setup. It's quick, but he does a great job of getting you attached to Steel Rose in the first couple pages through her daughter, before yanking, turning the world upside down with, geez, shocking. He's gonna bring tragedy and feelings into a book, but which is what Daniel Warren Johnson does. So he gets you attached to her and then yanks it all away. And you get her daughter having a memory of them together, why they're in the ER before getting the news of that she doesn't make it, which is, it's rare, but we've had wrestlers die in the ring, and at events. I know the one died here in Kansas City one time. So, I believe that was
Owen Hart.
Owen Hart, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the crap can go wrong. It absolutely can. And that's the thing that I love, people that will critique wrestling and call it fake and stuff. It's the result is predetermined.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is not fake.
No, they're still athletes, and what they're still doing is amazingly impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I've always sort of compared it to like figure skating and stuff. Like if you go and watch an exhibition, they're not actually scoring their, performances or something. Or if you go to the ice capades, they're not actually scoring them. It's not an actual,
right.
But then there's, ones that actually are, which would be, like your Greek, your Olympic wrestling and stuff like that.
It's a step above medieval times, right? We can all agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott's talking about that, and that also involved Owen Hart. But yeah, Steve Austin's career almost ended before he became a thing because he screwed up power.
Draws, I forget anyway, he ended up becoming paralyzed.
Yeah. So, all right. So we get this, we get the tragedy with Steel Rose, and then we jump ahead 10 years and we see the little girl is now trying to make it in wrestling, but nobody's helping her because of her dad. Even her uncle's not really helping her. Yeah. What did you think about this? What were your impressions of the dad and their interactions at this point in the story? John, you have girls. You just talked about one of them playing sports, and the consequences of that. What were your thoughts on the scene with the dad and the daughter?
I think the strength of the book is in the father-daughter and even the uncle relationship. I think it is the strength of the book, and I think it works really well. And you see the sympathy that the uncle has, and that he's like, look, she's got the drive, she's got the energy, she wants to be there. That's really cool, Brother Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And Digger Jim, hello to you. But so for me, the stuff I like the most is the father, daughter, and uncle bits that we get through this series. I think it's just really the strong stuff. I tend in the later issues to be like, oh, this was just a big match. Like I didn't like this issue as much, but like this one worked more for me just because of that dynamic and how it was planted here.
Greg, what about you? You got little ones. What do you think?
I do. And rereading this, it was, that scene with the daughter and mom in the bed where they're having that real life conversation of like, what's the afterlife like? And what is it like? Those are conversations that I've had with my daughter who's about to be 6 already. And like how their minds already are processing that stuff and processing death and dealing with it. Like, so that hit me a lot more on this reread. And, to see the reactions and, you're seeing the pain that the dad is going through, and trying to then, as a parent, he understands the dangers of wrestling. And so he's trying to then put up a barrier for his daughter so she doesn't deal with that. And like, I think that's a very real thing, that when tragedy happens in our lives, when stuff happens to us that is traumatic, even though you can pass away walking down the street, right? In any way. But I think when you have something so specific that happens, you as a protector, as a parent, are going to do everything in your power to try and say, well, let's avoid this situation that we know causes tragedy. Let's try and let's do a different activity. Let's not do wrestling because it's brought so much pain to our family. And so like those moments feel really real to me of that. How do you, as you as a dad going through the pain yourself and suffering, and, can you be there for your kids through that pain? And then there's whole other layers that we'll talk about why that's even stronger moving forward. But the first issue, I was like, wow.
Yeah, this first issue is powerful. Adam, you have more insight than anybody here. You also have daughters at both of the ages that this girl is seen in this
Yeah.
book right now,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah. They
So
both lost their mom. So that's
So what did you think about this?
it hit hard.
Yeah.
It really did. And I mean, I totally get where he's coming from on trying to protect her and stuff. And I can't imagine being in his place. And the guilt and everything we find out about later on. But
yeah, my mom had a big rule about sports in our household that we weren't allowed to play football. It was just not an option. Like even if you wanted to, although admittedly, me and my brothers were pretty fragile. Like as you could probably assume, like it wasn't a thing that we were going after, but it was one of the household rules. And we had similar conversations to the ones in the story, as far as like how my mom's feelings about how to keep safe playing physical games and how to be savvy and smart about what decisions we make.
Yeah. So we see this. See how she continues to have the argument with her dad of they're just not reaching each other in terms of he doesn't want her to do this, she wants to do this, and she walks away from him, and we get the proverbial deal with the devil here in a different form. True temptation comes along, and so what did you think of our? I don't even know if villain is the right word or catalyst. I guess the catalyst for this story. This Willard Necroton, who's basically like the evil promoter, maybe. I guess that's really what we're getting. Supernatural promoter. Yeah, he's a necromancer. And
basically.
Former necromancer, yes. Former world conqueror who's now just a giant wrestling fan because he gets it on inter-universe TV. So, but he comes forward and he offers her the deal of a lifetime. All you have to do is come win this wrestling tournament. I will give you your mom back. What did you guys think of our and villain's the wrong term. I don't even know what to call him. Our
Loki?
Our Loki? Yeah, maybe our Loki here.
The heel?
The heel. Well, the promoters are always the heel. So it's, that's...
I mean, McMahon was that way, right?
Yeah. So, Adam made you go last time. What do you think of our guy here that's our necromancer who's going to give her the deal too good to be true?
Yeah, it seemed too good to be true, but then, he was doing a lot of stuff that was also too good to be true, right. Transporting cross worlds, all that type of stuff. I kind of bought into it, that he would quite possibly be able to,
right,
do it if they won and everything. So, yeah.
What about you, John? What did you think of the evil promoter guy here we get?
Well, it wouldn't be Daniel Warren Johnson if it was just like on reality level here, right? We need to like take what's real and like take it up a notch, right? Turn that dial to 11. And in this case, the underworld and, deals with the devil and the afterlife and bringing back that. And there's very much a Hercules challenge to this that is kind of a fun, we're on a level of mythology here that kind of elevates this beyond the realism plane. And I think he does that in all of his books to a different extent. And I think it works really well in this particular story.
No. What about you, Greg? What do you think of this?
I don't remember solicits for this book, but I remember I remember not just knowing it was a wrestling book. Like I didn't know there was more layers to it. So I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed at first when it went this route because I was just like
again.
I feel like very often in comics we do this. You have a very straightforward story the first issue, and then right at the last minute we throw in the supernatural element,
the villain reveal,
and I get tired of it sometimes because I want just a straight lace like real story, and I guess I went in thinking that's what it was going to be at first. So I remember when that reveal hit where I was just like, I don't know if I like this. Now, obviously, spoiler alert, I do, and it was great, and it worked really well, and it's Daniel Warren Johnson. But, you know, I get it, though. I get the idea of that offer because it's enticing of there is that thing that you always see in storytelling of if there's a chance that you could bring back someone that you deeply cared about, like, and there was a remote chance that it could be real, even if you didn't believe it to, like, I understand the character's mindset of saying, well, we got to try, like, why, like, trying to rekindle stuff. And especially when it's 10 years later and it happened to her at such a young age that, you know, that's a relationship that she desperately longs for to have a, you know, a connection with. So I get it. But I do remember when I first got that reel, I was like, now we're going to like Mortal Kombat wrestling. Like,
Yeah. Cause I love how she's like, you know, it's scripted, it's predetermined, and he just starts laughing. He's like, "Oh, it's a good one."
Which means John's probably the necromonger. He didn't know it was scripted.
Yeah, the necromonger thinks it's real, of course.
John, it's you.
Yeah, and of course, in the other universe,
wait, you think I think wrestling is real?
Yes,
that's what he said. So, but in the other universes, we see that it is like that. You know that they're going to end up fighting with these people. It is real. So he tempts her. He even offers her. He says it's a tag team. She's like, I don't have a partner. And he offers her. He's like, you don't know anybody else that might be interested in bringing her back? And in front of a poster of Cobra-san. So, and we see her go and to a match where Cobra-san is fighting. And we see how far he's fallen from what he once was in the aftermath of the previous tragedy. What did you think about this, John? I'm curious. We all know what the twist is. We're going to give spoilers. How soon did you know?
I felt like I knew the twist pretty early, but it still landed for me.
Yeah.
Like it still worked for me, and I was fine with that. The reveal played strong enough to the emotions that I didn't need to be surprised by it. I knew the surprise wasn't really tricking me as much as it is her. And you know that when she finds out, that's when this is really going to go down. So for me, it was more like Chekhov's gun, right? When is this going to go off and how is it going to impact the rest of the story? Versus right here in this moment, it wasn't a shock so much as a wait until this bomb drops.
Yeah. Greg, what about you? What did you think of this? Her conversation with him. We see the condition he's in and then her trying to talk him into this.
Well, I am stupider as a comic reader than John because I did not see it coming. You know, now rereading it, knowing that it, you know, the twist that comes, I was like, oh, there are signs of how he talks as Cobra's son talks to her.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I should have seen this coming, but I didn't because I think I was so invested in her story, and I think he does do a good job of the conversation she has with her dad of keeping them kind of separated from that. I do love how throughout the whole book, like people keep showing up in the comic and they're like, oh, the necromonger talked to you too. Like she was the first one that he went to.
Yeah, he was like the last one he went to.
Right. And I found that like I didn't know. I don't know if I caught that the first time, but rereading this, I'm like, oh, this guy just is like going all over.
Well, he was working all the angles. For sure. Adam, what about you? What did you think of this? We get their conversation, and then afterward, the reveal of who Cobra-san is, that it's her dad. What did you think about this whole sequence here?
So the whole Cobra-san thing reveal, I halfway caught it at the very beginning. There's the scene, you know, whenever he's like, I got to go to work, you know, right before Mom's big match. And sorry, I won't be there with you. I got to go to work. I was thinking, and then, you know, I was like, he's the heel.
Yeah.
But then I was like, but the body types don't match. So, you know, I basically talked myself out of it.
Right. They do make it look like they don't, like, they give
Dad doesn't look nearly as tall and muscular as Cobra-san.
Yeah.
Which is clearly a trick of the artwork, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's a purposeful trick. You see the way he's dressed, and he just Yeah, he definitely does not come across as like big and muscular, broad shoulder wrestler guy. No, for sure.
No, and I think the thing that this is a Damar's critique. The thing that ticked me off the most on the reread is like he's like saying bye to her and like, oh, you've got 30 seconds to go out, and the intro for her is so quick, and then he's just showing up, and it's like, wait a second, they would have needed a lot more time than 30 seconds for him to go and get ready.
You know, he quick change artist. You know, he had it's like
and it's one of those things that one stuff bothers somebody else more than other, because that one didn't bother me, and neither did the intergalactic travel and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just
No, I get it, because it is, because he does look, and like even when they're having a conversation in the street, like even the years later, he looks skinny, like he doesn't look like a big guy. I think you see,
and if he was doing death matches like that in real life, I mean, whenever he was dad, he would be just covered in
you would
scars.
Think so, that he would have like, how she hadn't caught on to this all this time. Yeah. So there is a little, disbelief that you're gonna have to carry through this, but yeah, it's interesting that she talks him into it, and then you see him follow up by calling her again, and she actually answers this time, and or no, she calls him, and he and he still doesn't tell her. Like he doesn't tell her they're gonna go to this world to save her mom, and he's still holding it back. So what did you think about, because we see him confronted by the uncle, and here at the start, is that like the conversation? Yeah, we see him in like that he didn't tell her. So we see that whole conversation. What did you think about the uncle and him and the uncle? His wife's brother, the mother's brother. What did you guys think about that conversation? John, I'll let you go.
I mean, it's the juice and the weight of the piece, right? You're talking about everybody's guilt, everybody's desire to find some catharsis or some healing here, everybody struggling with the weight that's on them and the burden on them, and not being able to really find an outlet, which is again where the science fiction element plays, right? The fantasy storyline is useful because it pushes characters to resolutions they couldn't find on their own in reality. And that's what makes it work. Same with the elements in Murder Falcon or in any of Daniel Warren Johnson's pieces. The fantasy sci-fi elements are what push the story. And that's why I like them. And that's why they function so well. So for me, it's all the groundwork for the matches that are going to take up the next 5 issues.
Greg, what about you? What did you think of the, him and the uncle?
Real quick, I want to say Christopher's comment about seeing Optimus Prime do wrestling moves. It reminds me very much of Daryl Banks, who's a big wrestling fan. When he was doing the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern run, he put wrestling moves into the fight with Parallax. And like if you go back and reread it, there's like Green Lantern literally just doing like a DDT on Parallax and stuff.
Or hey, what about Wesley Snipes doing the suplex in Blade, right?
Right.
That guy.
So like I feel like you're gonna see a Transformer do a suplex at some point. Again, I feel like I'm drawn to slice of life stories. So like when we get into the heart, those conversations of the dad with the brother of the brother-in-law, basically. That's guilt, and that's real guilt and frustration and pain and anger that they're having with each other. And, as mad as Uncle Blood, I think is his name, is at, Cobra-san. And it's those are those moments where I go, that feels so real. 'Cause I can understand the frustration of how could you let that happen? Like you've done that move 1,000 times and things like that. And it's, and you're almost adding to the guilt of the person who's already feeling so much guilt about it. But from their standpoint too, those are the moments of the story that just hit for me. It was those moments that hit for me the most in Murder Falcon. And I think that's where Daniel Warren Johnson just really does exceed when he writes comics is those human conversations that we've all had in points of our life where I just think he does a really good job with it.
Yeah. What about you, Damon? What do you think of that?
Pretty much the same. I mean, there's got to be so much guilt on everybody's end.
Yeah.
I can definitely see the father having a bunch of guilt, the brother wanting to blame everything on the father, but then also being in the business, knowing that those things happen, and it wasn't maliciously done by any means. It was 100% just an accident.
Yeah.
So that so there's so much almost animosity, I feel like there.
Oh, there it definitely is. It's how do you get past that? Wasn't intentional, but you still blame it. He still blames him, and yet they're trying to keep a civil relationship for the girl, and it's just the strain there is palpable. It's and you can tell he's also frustrated. He's never come clean with her, and it's just So there's just a lot there. Once but then we see that they arrive at this wrestling tournament, and we start seeing some of the opponents. So we get this giant splash page of the tournament and the opponents after we get a brief introduction. So did you guys register that there was another team from Earth?
Yes.
Yeah, immediately. I did. I was like, oh, that's going to be important. Now, I didn't think it was going to be the uncle, but I totally got that there was some, was surprised and there's something key about that. What about you, Damers and John? Did you guys notice that there was the other team from Earth when you saw that page?
I noticed there was another team from Earth, but I never put two and two together.
Yeah, same. I did, however, like the twist that all the teams, because we meet Orangabang right in the bar, and very early on we start to realize, oh crap, everybody's playing for something like this. It's not like we're the only one with a noble cause here. Everybody has a noble cause, so this is not going to end well for most everybody.
That's how he got them roped in. I mean,
it's beautiful.
Why would they do it?
That was a bigger twist for me than the dad, for me personally.
I'm not gonna lie though, I did love that one of the teams is from your mom's basement.
Yes.
What? Yes. Unfortunately, we don't get to see them at all. So,
no, really. You don't. And that's probably because they're in their mom's basement.
So you talked about, and I was going to save the Orangabang. We meet them in the bar. They kind of help them against what ultimately is going to be our big bads in the wrestling tournament here. But their first opponents, we quickly find out that they're fighting their sister, right?
Yeah. It was their sister.
They're fighting to save their sister, and they're just as desperate and to get their loved one back as Luna and her dad. So what did you think about the way this first match plays out? I'm curious. John, since you're not the wrestling fan, what did you think about how this plays out, and then particularly the ending of this match between the two?
Well, I think obviously the dad went into this thinking, I'm not going to let her fight. I'm going to keep her on the sidelines the whole time. I'm going to take over and be the lead and just keep her off the ropes. But that doesn't play out, right? Orangabang is too tough, and they start messing him up, and he needs to do the tag. And that's the draw. That's the excitement for the reader, because dad would never put his daughter in real risk, and unless it was dire. And that's when that moment clicks over, and you see her come in and level these guys. That's great. It's a great play, the way that all comes across. And then they give you, of course, the other team playing simultaneously.
I mean, you get this. You guys talk about this, his art.
When she flies across just to the side there before the half spread page, she gives the knee to the guy who's out, right? She lands on the younger orangutan and then flies across with that knee right into the face of the other. It's a great sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, she knocks the one guy so he can't interfere, and then
Yeah.
climbs up, and and that panel where she's doing the moonsault, it's freaking insane. Yeah, so
good.
and gets the victory. But yeah, and then we see the moment at the end. What about you, Greg? What did you think of this sequence?
I mean, this was where it became a reality to me of, I think you root for Steel Sun because that's, the backstory more. But it was the realization that there are real stakes here, that like no one's a villain on this team. Like everyone that's, in this tournament is playing to save someone that they deeply care about.
And yeah, it is real on the other worlds. And on Earth is the only one where they have at least some predetermined outcomes.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Everybody's playing. So for
all
our
the other
heroes, it's
don't
a shock.
respect the Earth ones because they don't. They
because
know the rumor. The rumor
because
is
it's predetermined, and
yeah.
And everyone else knows that it's predetermined except for the necromonger, because he's like, that's funny. Like, and there was also another scene where someone's like, isn't wrestling real? I forget who. It might have been in the bar with the Rangabang, where they said like, isn't wrestling real? And Cobra Sun's like, well, wrestling's the same on all. Isn't wrestling the same on all planets? He's like, yeah, that's right. And so there are some that don't realize that are.
We don't know. Well, I think the general consensus is that's what they've all heard. Is it's like not real on Earth, but they don't. None of them know for sure because they've never been there. And so when they meet the Earth wrestling, they accuse them of that. But
Orangabang. So that conversation goes, "That's your wrestling on Earth is all for show." And Cobra Sun goes, "Oh, doesn't pro wrestling work the same everywhere?" And there's a pause. And the Orangabang guy goes, "Of course, we knew they must be lying." Yeah. So that's the rumor that they hear.
Yeah.
And they assume so. Again, these moments of fighting were fantastic. The wrestling was real. Again, you start to feel for, Orangabang. You're like, man, they're fighting for something, and and they're just, you can see the pain that everyone's going through. Like,
and the panel where she like comforts them after they win.
Yeah.
Like she wins, but she comforts them. She's like, I got to get my, and you see that bottom panel where she's hugging them. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it almost like I guess there are still some, because like, and then I'm relooking at in the next match, the Knights of Ryan or whatever, like they're fighting to bring back one of the best soldiers or something.
They're bringing back a hero to their motivations are
so their motivations not as pure from the other aspects, but and you don't know what Pizza Party's aspect is. They probably just want to revive Papa John or something, but
what about you, Damon? What do you think of this first match and Orangabang, and how the ending is handled here, where you see, one team's going to lose, everybody's losing, there's more losers.
That's when it really sunk in that, even if, nobody gets really hurt in these real matches, which seems unlikely, people are still going to lose a lot.
Yeah, you're definitely losing no matter what. So we move on, and we get they're getting ready for the next match, and we see what's was it Knights of Rhyme or whatever that is. All right, I forget. I get some of the names confused.
I think that's Knights of Rhine.
Yeah, and we see what their motivation is, but we get the scene of them getting ready to train, and him talking about the fact. He still doesn't tell her, but talking about the fact that him and her mom used to tag team, and them figuring out that they're going to have to work together if they're going to get through this. What did you guys think of that? And I'll let I don't know who I haven't let go first for a while. I'll let Greg go first this time.
Well, I think the flashbacks are what make the story moving forward, because you get a lot of wrestling, you get a lot of action. You get a lot of over-the-top matches. And again, I'm going to gravitate towards the heart. I'm going to gravitate towards those flashbacks. And, to see the tag team and how they kind of were interacting, that's where I'm like, I should have understood a little bit more, because you can tell there's a closeness to them in the tag team role, and there still hasn't been the reveal that it's the dad. I don't know if we've talked about this before. I don't know if we've ever officially announced it, but like Cobra Sun is the daughter.
We did a little bit, yeah.
We
The
got
audience
the reveal earlier.
The audience knows, but the daughter doesn't. Right?
Well, but the audience doesn't even know until
Yeah.
the
Yeah, they
officially.
No, in issue 2, at the end of issue 2, he's answering the phone.
Oh, he does. Yes, okay, he does.
Yeah, and you see that
it's
not his real hair; it's a wig.
That's right. Okay,
part of the
so that's right. We do get that.
That's why I like
issue
2. I think so much.
Yeah.
And so okay, so then never mind. I forgot when I was just remembering the reveal of when she got it. So yes,
Yeah.
okay. So I love those moments. I love getting the flashbacks though of where we're getting to learn who they were and why their story is impactful. And I don't want Daniel Warren Johnson to do, but he could do, if he ever wanted to, an Orangutan book, version of it where you get their stories. And I think he would do a good job of making you feel like that too. So
and I love this whole like the another montage.
Yes.
Like I love that.
very Team America right there.
Yeah. Dave Maris, what about you? What did you think of this secret of them bonding without her really yet realizing it's her dad, but like as they get ready for their second match? What did you think about this?
I really liked it. It's like you pointed out the montage. That was actually the page I was on. I liked that whenever I first saw it. To me, the daughter is finally getting to, hear some about her mom more from an outside source that she hadn't, and things about her that she didn't know.
Yeah.
And that just brings them closer together as a tag team.
Okay. John, did I give you a chance to talk about this part, or do you have anything?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. We can keep going.
All right. So
It doesn't matter what you think, John.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, let me tell you what's gonna go down here.
So we get their second match, and we see them actually like working together, starting to really work together. Sun and Steel here as they're taking on their next opponents. And I don't know that there's much to that match other than they move on. But then we see the other semifinal, and we get kind of our FYSO, which we haven't yet found out what that means, but we will eventually. And the other team from Earth, and we find out here that it is the uncle has also been sucked into this to try to save. So there's another opportunity to save her mom, but we see that the team that they almost got in the bar fight with is rather vicious. What did you guys think of the sequence with the uncle and the other team? Adam, I'll let you go first this time.
The uncle being one, the other team on the other team from Earth definitely was a surprise to me. How vicious the other guys were. The other team was kind of surprised me. In fact, going after the bell and breaking his back, and the fact that they just kept going. And then you find out why, a little bit more. Not necessarily why they kept going, but that they're both fighting for something themselves.
Yeah. What about you, John? What did you think of this sequence with the uncle and the other, setting up the drama for the final match?
Obviously, this is the midpoint here in the story, and they need to up the stakes in a big way. I thought this was a better twist, and I didn't see it coming when I was reading it. So I liked that a lot. That was exciting. And then, of course, it just gets nasty, like immediately. And you have, tragedy, and you have the reality setting in, both for Lona. I don't know how to pronounce it. Right?
Lona, yeah.
and for her dad. I think in both cases, they're both realizing this could end where we lose everything that we had to try to gain something we'd already lost.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great eye opener for our hero team.
What about you, Greg? What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a good twist because again, you feel. I think the brother had been such a side character in the book that you forget that he has just as much pain and grief in this as Cobra Sun and the daughter do,
and knowledge of wrestling because he was kind of training her, so he's clearly in the game as well.
That he's going to do what he can again to save his sister because there is something about family, right? He's probably known her. He's known her the longest of anyone. So he also has a deep tie, and sometimes families you don't, but other times you do. And so I think it was a twist that I wasn't expecting because they never set him up to be a wrestler. He has a knowledge, he's in the game as a trainer, but I never would have thought the necromonger went to him too to bring him in because he knew he'd bring something to it. But I like it because I think John, you said there was a point where the other shoes got to drop eventually, right? More okay, we're raising the stakes, more things have to happen because that's comics.
For sure. So it sets up, we're going to have a no holds bar, hardcore extreme. We got the Mick Foley Mankind match coming here. Yeah. With the thumbtacks and the razor wire and
he's got the neon bulbs, the halogen bulbs
and chairs. And,
oh my god, this was the spread page. I was like, oh my gosh, this is epic. I love it. He's not even willing to tell his daughter the truth, but he is willing to get all his gear together and just go to town.
Yeah, he isn't willing to tell her the truth, but he is willing to put her in a no holds barred.
And that pissed me off. That was a part where that bothered me because I feel like Daniel Warren Johnson went against his storytelling here because, he's been so protective of his daughter that I feel like it needed to be the daughter that wanted to have the no holds bar match or something, because for the dad to be like, all right, I want to have a no holds bar match now. And my daughter is the one that he's been so protective of her. And I get it just felt like he still was going to do whatever he wants to do to protect her.
Right.
And it just almost felt like we're pulling away the parental role that he was so much trying to keep her from it for 10 years of this, where he was doing this. And even when they were wrestling, that I get it. Stakes were raised right before that, but it felt like such a turn for the dad where I was like, I don't see the dad going, I want to put my daughter, who I've been trying to protect this whole series, into a no holds bar match with bats with barbed wire and stuff when it's real.
Somebody that just broke their uncle's back.
Yeah.
It's a stretch. It's a big stretch.
That was the biggest of all, of a book where they're doing a fight in another dimension. That was a point where it bothered me. I was like, I think the daughter needed to do this and be like, no, we have to defend our uncle or something more. And it would have been more powerful or believable.
I get completely where you're coming from. To me, the way it reads is not that I get he's doing it because of what happened to Uncle, but I also think he's doing it because he feels like it's probably the only way they have to level the playing field against this other group, because of the brutality of the moves that they're doing and everything else. That he's like, if we're going to stand a chance, we got to be able to use things beyond what we normally do. And so that's the justification. But you're correct in the fact that I still don't necessarily see him making that choice in that moment. But I do feel like it's a stretch that he would make that choice. But I get the logic behind what he's trying to do to a certain extent. is level the playing field. Like, okay, we're gonna go brutal. We're gonna go brutal in ways that I'm used to. I'm used to getting hit by these things. I understand how this works, like a little bit, but
yeah, I just think that they hit so much on the dad's protectiveness in this that's where it's tough. It's a tough suspension of belief for me.
Especially the advice he gives her. She asked, "Will it hurt?" And he's like, "Yes, but you have to push that down deep, separate it from yourself, and hide it away where it can't touch you, and don't be afraid of the blood." Yeah. I mean, that doesn't seem like something you'd be telling your daughter.
But, and yet also business, and yet also not confessing who you really are.
Yeah.
Going into
but
it, that feels like
doing this whole time. Like,
this feels like the opportunity, and it's impressive that he's not.
But what he's telling her, you're saying the advice is, but it's literally what he's been doing this whole time. Is he's been pressing down his guilt and his everything else, and not telling her the truth, and like, which we get to later, where she, when she finally confronts him later, is we can't. If we're going to do this, we can't push it down and can't separate yourself from it, like what he's been doing this whole time. So it is a metaphor for that standpoint, but it does set up an absolutely brutal match with F Your Stupid Opinions, also known as Fizo. And we get a few glimpses of Fizo's motivation here. We see a mother, losing her son. We don't actually see who the other guy lost, but we hear about it later. But yeah, we see this absolutely brutal match. What did you guys think of this brutal match and how it turns out? Because they don't win. What did you think, John?
I think this was my second favorite issue in that I didn't see the twist and the ending of them losing coming. And I liked reading it issue by issue, not in a big trade. Having to wait a month between this and the next, this was a great cliffhanger, and it was very effective in the storytelling. I'm imagining that was lessened reading it all in one shot, but like in the moment, having to wait, a month and figure out like, wow, how is Daniel Warren Johnson going to write himself out of this? Like, that was interesting to me. So yeah, the fight was definitely more brutal, definitely more the most extreme of the ones we got so far, and therefore incredibly compelling.
Yeah, Damers, what did you think about this?
Same thing. It was definitely more extreme. I did not see them losing. I just didn't see that coming. I thought that was very well done, and I even thought, whenever they. This was the final match. I was like, but I've still got this much left.
Yeah.
What is he going to do in this much? And then they lost, and I was like, okay, I'm really wondering what's left in the book.
There's still 2 more issues.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Greg, what about you? What do you think? Sorry. I
was just thinking it was definitely, a bloody, normal Japanese style death match.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the same thing that John said, like the fact that they lost in the 5th issue, knowing that there were 2 more issues. It wasn't even 1 more issue. It was 2 more issues coming. I was going, where can we go from here? I remember literally sitting there going, oh, I did not see them losing. What's going to happen?
No.
Let alone in 2 more issues, like, what story can you tell? And gosh darn it, Daniel Warren Johnson, you do what you do.
Yeah. So what we get, though, after they lose is we get that the 2 victors are now, unlike our team that's trying to save one person, they're trying to save different people. And they start fighting to determine who gets to save who. And they're immediately is to the death because neither one of them is going to give up. So, and so we see that at the end of the issue after they win that neither one of them's actually won yet. And then we start the next issue with a flashback of.
Well, before we dive too far, I just wanted to shout out Nick's Kicks and Comics is in a chat group with me. And I told them I'm doing this show on Powerbomb. I know a lot of you guys are big fans, so come check it out. And he said, make sure you mention Ignacio community member Ignacio apparently submitted some
yes.
artwork at the back of each issue. In the single issues, they include artwork from fans who sent them and submitted them to do a Powerbomb at Gmail or something like that. And Ignacio won. And so in issue number 5 at the back, if you're an Ignacio fan, and who isn't, he's got this really great
that Street Fighter one, right?
Street Fighter,
Yes.
homage, basically, where you see a battle going down with the health bars across the top and everything. Really cool. So shout out Iggy, and he's got his IG account listed, his Twitter account listed. So it's cool though. They do that in not every issue, but I'd say almost all of them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that. And thanks to Nick for mentioning it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So we kick off the next issue, and we're getting flashback of after she's died, the brother and the uncle, or dad and uncle again. But then we also get flashback to him meeting Steel Rose originally. So what did you guys think of the little flashbacks that we start this issue with?
Again, it's the emotion, right? It's the juice. It's the stuff that that is really foundational to the kind of work that Daniel Warren Johnson does, which is that family loss, isolation, drama, guilt stuff that is so relatable, so that people who aren't wrestling fans or athletes can relate to what people are going through.
Greg, what about you? What did you think of the?
I mean, I told you I love the flashbacks because that's where you get the heart of the book, and you get his pain. And right after that flashback, in the midst of that fight, that was probably the most realistic part of the wrestling match for me. Is when the FYSO are fighting. He basically gets one of them gets thrown onto Cobra Sun's back while his daughter's on a stretcher, and you can just see he just snaps, and he's just like, forget this. And as the guy goes a flip, he just catches him and DDTs him right into the ground, not on the mat in the wrestling ring.
Yeah, and he doesn't do it in the way that he does the pile driver without.
Yes, the pile. Yeah, like he's taking him out because you can just tell his frustration is he's done. And that panel is horrifying, holy cow, even the lettering behind it, the boom, it's a very powerful panel because I just feel like there's so much pain in that panel because he's gone, the guilt, seeing his daughter in a stretcher because of what's happening, and I was like, okay, here we go. On the heartstrings.
What about you, Adam? What do you think of this?
Once again, pretty much the same thing. The flashback, and then them meeting and everything, and then seeing him over his daughter on the stretcher, and just thinking, him probably thinking, "Oh no, not again."
Yeah, not again.
And then the one guy jumping on him, and then him going into the power bomb, and not power bomb, but
pile driver. Yeah.
Pile driver. I was trying
to it doesn't matter. I said a DDT. You just throw out wrestling moves knowing John doesn't know the difference.
John doesn't know. Everybody else watching knows, but John doesn't know.
Yeah, I like the LMQZ as well. It was amazing.
Yeah, but what about the silly flip-a-rink-a-dink?
Oh my gosh, yeah, right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, the deer hoser, so good.
So we get through this, and we see that after he pile drives the one guy, that they basically, the two winners, murder each other.
Yep.
It
gets dark.
It gets dark quick here. So our promoter comes back. It's like, oh, you guys win now because our champions are dead. And they come out and they get the belts, and they're all like, thank goodness we've done this, and we've lost so much time. And they're going through this hole, and they think they're about to get their mother back, and they find out it was all a lie.
I mean, we can bring her back. She'll be a zombie, but like, whatever.
Yeah, so you get hit with the weight of all of this is not just their journey, but everyone else that fought and suffered through this. And the two people that just killed each other to bring back their loved ones
for nothing.
Because this guy couldn't do what he promised.
Yep.
What did
fight promoters?
What did you think of this twist, John?
I mean, it's expected. He's shifty. You knew it. He's offering you something that's too good to be true, and so that was to be expected. I will say my favorite thing about this issue is it's the most lost issue. Like all through it, you're getting random flashbacks, little bits and moments across and I think it just, like the best episodes of Lost, hits the feels really well and highlights the present time and what's impacting the decision making for your hero in the present. So you're watching
an hour and 7 minutes before we got a Lost reference.
It might be a record for
I did well. But what we see here is how Cobra's son has really been impacted by the meeting of his wife, the birth of his daughter, and that has shaped a lot of his life. And I think that's the juice in this issue. And what I liked most about it was the way in which those things played out. Yes, Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
And to you, dear Hoser.
So, Greg, what about you? What did you think about this turn here?
It made me mad. Again, too good to be true, but I was hoping for like happy ending kind of thing. And
in a DWJ book,
I was happy. We've been playing with emotions so much. I felt like, I don't know if I really wanted it, but I wanted it.
Yeah.
And so then I was frustrated because everyone that went through what they went through, they got hoodwinked and it bothered me. And so again, it worked. It works for what happens in issue 7, or is it issue 8? I don't even know. 7. I don't even remember how many issues there are, but it was, you have the moment where the dad's with the daughter and, and then how they show what they're going to do for the final issue. And I'm like, really? Really?
So yeah, that they're gonna fight God at the end.
This is where we're going with it now.
It is where you're going with it.
We're fighting God now, really?
So for me, I don't feel like it was much of a twist. Like I like John, and you knew this wasn't gonna happen. A, because it was a DWJ book, but also because I feel like where Murder Falcon was a lot about him coming to terms with the cancer and himself and his journey. This was a lot about them coming to the acceptance of finding each other again through this loss that they had, where they lost her, but they'd also lost each other in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And so, this was completely expected that it wasn't going to work out the way we wanted it to, but I did not see, and now you get to fight the creator of the universe.
Yeah, and can we talk about the biggest gutter loss failure? Like,
this is
the worst.
Yes.
Which should be the coolest double splash page ever, and it's the worst. It is awful. You can't even see his head. The gutter loss is so bad.
Thankfully, in the single issue, was not a problem.
Yeah, but in the trade.
In the trade, it does not work.
In the single issue, it looks a lot better. So
yeah, I mean, you can
ruin the spine of your trade.
Yeah, ruin the spine of your trade. You can get it. Damers, what about you? What did you think of this? The twist that he can't bring her back, and B, that now you're gonna fight God.
Yeah, the couldn't bring her back didn't really surprise me. I was still hoping, I guess, even though I probably knew better deep down that that he would, but it didn't really shock me that he couldn't. And it just sort of struck me as a normal kind of almost fight promoter, like John said earlier, tactic. And there's like, you lied to us? It's like, lie's a strong word.
Yeah.
I thought I had enough juice to, this year to pull it off, but if I try and bring your mom back, she might come back as a zombie. You know,
Which tells you that not just has he says, I thought this year I might have enough. So he's been pulling the scam multiple times.
Yeah. I do appreciate though how like they do that panel where he like grows tremendously large and he just reminds him like, remember who I am. Like, don't come at me. Like, I still can
have powers. Yes.
Yeah.
I felt like them going against God was almost like jumping the shark, almost, which is, I mean, you know, I know it keeps upping itself, but you know, that was a surprise.
I think we're in the same boat.
So I felt that it was a little unnecessary. Like, I get where the conversation with God at the end, but them fighting him like felt a little like, okay. It was like, it's just another reason to put another wrestling sequence in, sort of. Like,
yep.
I mean, I guess they have to have a reason for them to have the conversation at the end, but yeah, it just felt like a little gratuitous. Yeah, now I'm gonna have a fight God. But so any thoughts about that, or are we ready for the final sequence here? About the fight with God.
I mean, I will say, like, yeah, I don't love it, but it worked in the sense that we finally got a character who could grant the wish, like who maybe had the ability to give them what they wanted. Because up until now, I think most savvy readers would be like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I know if they win, they're not going to get what they wanted. It's a MacGuffin. Right. This is built on a house of cards, right? It's not going to work. So for me though, like I liked the twist, if only because it allowed the glimpse of hope for our heroes that maybe they could get the MacGuffin, the thing that they were after all along. And so as a writer, I liked it. As a reader, I was like, okay, it's cheap or at least simple. But as a writer, I was like, good, this gets us to the stakes for the finale that we needed.
So you guys like how John just called me not a savvy reader, right there?
Yeah, he did just call you not a savvy reader. So,
I said you were a savvy reader. I said maybe not a writer.
No, you said for those of us that weren't savvy readers, we didn't see it coming. I was still holding out hope that the Necromonger could do it.
Oh,
I said that, and you called me not savvy.
Come on,
reader.
That guy's as shifty as a $3 suit.
Here's my bigger, like in some ways, my real problem is because they're obviously going to lose this one, but they've already lost. Like. You know, they already lost once. They had to come to terms with it. He gave them hope back, took it, giving them hope again. Like, I feel like it's maybe just one step too far for me. Like, in terms of, because they lost, and they lost their hope, and then they got it back. And then they find out, no, sorry, I can't actually do it. But here's somebody who can. And then you just got to beat God. And then it's like, oh, well, you didn't get it. So you lost your hope again. Like, I don't know. It was just like,
yeah, but JP, I'll push back a little bit on that because it almost, I think it sets up for what you said, what makes it so good about the ending, about how they found each other more through the midst of this. Right. And I think, again, it allows you to have that ending where they find each other more through that.
Yeah.
So that'd be the only place where I'd push back of the double loss is, again, it gives them hope in the midst of, you know, they're gonna go. They would do anything to bring her back, and it's one of those like, I don't, you know, it's like the Flash movie, right? Or it's like and Booster Gold, like where there's stuff in the DC continuity that you can't change, and Booster Gold, there's that issue in like issue 5 in the New 52 where he keeps going back to that scene with Barbara Gordon get shot by Joker, and he can't change it because there is stuff that no matter what, but against no matter what, even the hope that there could be a hope out there, I think it adds to the stakes then at the end where you have some stuff that comes about of, listen, if you said it in a volume 2 that someone else comes back and says, hey, you can you can have your mom back again, she'd probably go, well, let's try another tournament. Let's do it. Right? Because you're always going to go for that hope.
Right.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add about that before we get to our final couple pages here? All right. So our ending, they don't manage to defeat God in a wrestling match.
They do make God bleed.
They do make God bleed. So they do. They do their. I mean, they do everything they can. Literally.
It's like 300, right? You proved that God could bleed.
Yeah. And so he honors them at the end, not by returning her, but returning Lona a memory. So what did you guys think about the conversation that he gives back to her? Damaris, I'll let you go first.
It hit hard. But it also, it was a great, I guess, consolation prize for not being able to bring her back. It even if they would have won, bringing her back would have, caused so many problems, probably,
Yeah.
In all honesty. And this is probably the best thing that could have happened.
John, what about you? What do you think of the conversation and then the last page, obviously, that she gets back there?
I think the reason it works so well is because truth is way better than fantasy in the end, right? And what they gain is not a fantasy, a ghost mom, a zombie mom, or whatever. What they gain is truth. They both gain a little truth about themselves, about their relationship between the two of them, and then, of course, this memory with mom that has a lot of value and truth going forward. These are things that may not be tangible, but are certainly valuable and real. And that's the guts of this piece and the guts of this ending. And then seeing mom in the crowd watching, because she's been there this whole time in the afterlife, able to enjoy it. That's where it's at. And that's the stuff that hits the hardest, because again, it leans heavily on truth. It leans heavily on what we know as human beings experiencing life, pain, loss, whatever. We know what truth is, and that's what the ending gives us.
Yeah. Greg, what about you?
I mean, it's on a note that I feel like we all know as readers and fans of movies and things like that. Like, how often have we watched a prequel where we know how it's going to end and we still are invested in the story because we care about that story?
Right.
And it's such a brilliant storytelling technique, to have that conversation where the mom is talking on the bed with her daughter and that, she says, we're all going to die. We're all going in the end. Eventually we die. Our outcome is always known. I guess what I'm saying is don't think it's about the end. It's about the story, and everyone's story is worth telling no matter how it starts and no matter how it ends. And she's like, always be watching your story. And I was just like, how true is that? Right? Like we know our story is going to end at some point as humans. Like we're going to die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I'm going to figure it out. No, I'm kidding.
But, but how often we've seen a movie that works real well over prequel, it's going to end. And you're like, but I want to see how
want to see the journey.
Ends, right? I want to be a part of the journey. Yeah. And it was just such a sombering, remembrance, reminder, I guess, to say be in the moment. Remember those moments of the journey of, yes, there's pain and there's suffering when someone we love dearly passes, and but all those memories that we had of being in that journey with them, that's part of the story, and that's something that you can't take away. And then Daniel Warren Johnson has to throw the end page with her in the crowd and just make me a grown man crying as I'm reading a comic book. I already knew that happened, and I'm just like, this is beautiful.
You knew you weren't getting out of this without that. Come on.
Examine. This is so good.
All right, so final thoughts here on Do a Powerbomb. Greg, I'll let you give your final thoughts first here.
I think it's great. I agree with what Damaris and John said. Murder Falcon's top for me still. That's But when I read this, I didn't compare it to Murder Falcon. I compared it to everything I read that year, and this is easily it was a top tier book from that year for me in comics, like hands down. I forget what my list was, but I'm pretty sure this was one, if not two. Like, and so for Daniel Warren Johnson to bring, I don't want to compare it to Daniel Warren Johnson book. I'm going to compare it to every other book out there that I'm reading at the time, because that's a fair comparison of what am I reading in the moment. And I remember looking forward to every single issue of Duo Powerbomb coming out. Like, I couldn't wait for it to come out. And so I think that's an important, reminder for me as a reader of, I liked his other work better, but comparing it to the hundreds and hundreds of comic books that came out last year at that same time, it was above almost everything that I read, because it's such a powerful thing. And so I don't want to knock this book because it's not as good as something else that you previously wrote. It's still better than a lot of other things that were wrote.
John, what about you? Final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, Greg definitely nailed it. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it was a top 3 for me of last year, and incredibly high praise, and top 3 of his. I think I still think I like Beta Ray Bill just a smidge better, but I just maybe am more partial to Marvel because my youth. So I think in that way, it's just right there neck and neck. And in all cases, I think he sticks the landing really, really well. He lands with a reveal that's usually more emotional and internal than is like a big shocking twist. And I think in that way, it sticks with you longer. I'm not going to ruin the moment at the end of Beta Ray Bill, but it's definitely one that that hit super hard. And I was like, not expecting it. And it was not a big twist or a big battle with an enemy or anything like that. It was just a simple moment of realization that is similar to what these two characters here at the end of Do a Powerbomb get. And that's lasting. That's deeper. And that's to get that at the end of a book, any entertainment, whatever, is always going to be way better than just, cheap thrills.
Damn it.
So I think I did the book and myself a great disservice in going into it, comparing it to Murder Falcon at the beginning. Just because, it's rare that a book can live up to that. And this book was really good, even with some of my little nitpicky, things on it. It was, the best book I've read in a long time.
Yeah. So for me, I agree with all the stuff you guys are saying. And at this point, you go into a Daniel Warren Johnson book, and he's going to try to hit you with emotional impact. We've talked about Murder Falcon, and it's about a person dealing with cancer and his friends dealing with him and sickness and trying to still live your life. And we all know people have had to fight that battle. Unfortunately, too many. We've all known. And this is really, it's about dealing with the loss of a loved one and how, moving through those moments and continuing to do it. And yet he wraps these stories and things that you talk about, frivolous entertainment or it's metal music and it's wrestling and that doesn't have any deep, but he finds a way to connect things that people connect with and that are often seen as shallow, but lots of people connect with at a deeper level. That love wrestling, that love metal music, or love these things. And he finds a way to use them to help tell this human and real story that we all go through at different times in different ways. And the book is phenomenal. Is it as good as Murder Falcon? Not for me, but that doesn't really matter. Is it amazing? Right. And the answer is, like you said, is it amazing compared to most of what we get? Absolutely. And he does a fantastic job. And I was just super impressed. And so as high a recommend as I can give for anybody that has not read it. Read this, read Murder Falcon. sounds like I need to read the other ones. I haven't gotten to them yet that he's done. Whether it be Beta Ray.
That's what this group is for, right?
We're gonna have another indie show here.
Or big ones.
Can we switch up the indie show and do a Marvel book on the indie
we
show?
Can do something. We don't have to call it the.
This is the DWJ group.
Well, this technically is the indie show.
Well, it doesn't have to be an indie show when we do it, so we can call it something else. So, but yeah, he's going to hit those emotional notes, and he does it super well all the time. So, all right, with that, we've went longer than normal, so we're going to get out of here.
I would almost argue, even if you was to put DWJ on, like Beta Ray Bill, it's not really a Marvel book anymore. It is, but it's more indie than it is Marvel, in my opinion.
So we can call it that. That's all that matters.
we'll call it whatever we need to get it done. So
Me too, Scott.
Yeah. No, he's definitely like someone next time I'm in a con that he's going to be at is going to be high on my list to be.
Oh, that was a highlight of C2E2.
So, all right, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I want to thank Scott for hanging out with us all night. Let's see. Ghetto Head Productions was here for a little bit. Brother Joe was here. I Got Issues was here. Chris, glad you could stop by for a little bit. Don't know who else still here. That Old Comic Smell. Thank you all for stopping by. So yeah, we appreciate it. And with that, we're going to get out of here. So later, everybody.
Later.
Night.